Hi, welcome, and thank you to everyone that is joining us to learn more about DACA and deportations and how the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS, feeds the deportation machine. Bienvenidos a todos. Tenemos una línea de interpretación para las personas que no hablan inglés. La información está en la caja de comentarios y el número es el 773-657-9204. My name is Antonio Gutierrez. I'm the Strategic Coordinator of Organized Communities Against Deportations, OCAD. I prefer they, them, their pronouns. And of course, it is very important for us to discuss pronouns as we want to be inclusive of all the individuals that find themselves to identify as gender nonconforming, such as myself. And I will be one of your panel's co-moderators. We have a set of panelists joining us today that will go into depth on this topic of DACA, highlighting that during the current administration, all immigrants are a threat of deportation, and how a deportation is not necessarily the end stage for our resistance work. We are excited to partner with other organizations such as United We Dream, Detention Watch Network, Mi Gente, and Beyond Legal Aid on this webinar in the campaign to bring Beto back home. With that, I would like to introduce my co-moderator for this panel, Cynthia from United We Dream.
Thank you, Antonio. And thank you everyone who's joining us. And again, as a reminder, si usted necesita interpretación, vamos a tener en los comentarios cómo usted pueda comenzar a escuchar este webinar en español. Mi nombre es Cynthia Garcia. My name is Cynthia Garcia. I have the privilege and honor to work here at United We Dream under our community defense, community protection work. And as Antonio shared, we are in this space and in this fight collectively for Beto and the many thousands and millions of people who are immigrants who are at risk of deportation. And also to really highlight the role that UCIS has taken up, particularly in this administration, to collaborate more directly and intentionally to target immigrants, especially as we're seeing all the changes into immigration policies, all the unchecked balances that are happening with this agency of ICE, CBP, and now UCIS leaving a back door wide open for the information to be shared and for also targeting and actually retaliating against people who are speaking out against these entities. So I wanted to make sure that we ground ourselves so much in power and the resilience and the resistance of our people who are joining us today to make sure that one, you are informed, that you are aware of what's happening, but also that you're ready to fight back.
Yes, our undocumented community is under constant threat of raids, deportation, and detention. Collaboration between local law enforcement and ICE is only on the rise, and surveillance tech tools are targeting communities of color for further criminalization. In order to resist these attacks, we must promote a sense of solidarity and collaboration within the immigrants' rights movement. But then now I'll give it up to Cynthia so that we can get started with our panelists.
Thank you, Antonio, and thank you, everyone. I want to start just by hearing from our panelists, just with a brief introduction, share your name, your pronouns, a little bit about your work and the organization that you do that work with or collaborate with. And also we want to hear about how you got into this work, what brought you here. And I want to kick it off to Karina to get us started.
Hello, everyone. My name is Karina Ruiz. Pronoun she, hers, ella. Originally from Estado de Mexico, and I live in Phoenix, Arizona for the past 21 years. And yes, so I get involved through this work because I am directly impacted as a DACA recipient. I have friends that have been in detention, and I have heard from them how horrific conditions there are in those detention camps. for time. So I knew that I had to do something to keep our community safe, informed, and to fight back against this deportation machine. And here in Arizona, after SB 1070 being zone 0, we are, trying our best to inform people of their rights and to fight back to abolish ICE. Thank you.
Beto, if you can go next, we'll do the same, and then we have follow up with Ali.
All right. Well, hello everyone. My name is Jesus Lopez. I'm best known by Beto by my community and friends. I'm not an official member of an organization, but I've been working with OCAD for a minute. Some political work that I have been doing was that when I was in detention, I tried to gather up people and we gather up some signatures, trying to expose the difficult situations and the horrible conditions that we were living in while detained. And that's pretty much it. I got into this work because I personally experienced this deportation machine. So it's time to take an action upon it.
Hi all, my name's Ali Heinen. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a staff attorney and Equal Justice Works Fellow at Beyond Legal Aid, which is a legal aid organization located in Chicago, Illinois. Our organization focuses on providing lawyers and activists with different ways to serve our underserved communities and try to mobilize them towards justice and pursuing social change. We recognize that legal representation and filing lawsuits and other things of that nature they're not the only tools to pursue social change and to fight against injustice and resist the harm that is caused throughout our communities, mostly by those in power. And I came to this work because one of our community activist partners at Beyond Legal Aid is Organized Communities Against Deportation. And that is how I first learned about Beto's case and got to know Beto and his family and learned how to fight against the criminalization and deportation against specifically our DACA recipients and other undocumented folks by following the lead of OCAD and other activist partners in our community.
Thank you, all of you, for introducing yourself, right? We're gonna get started with our panel discussion. The first question that I have for all of you, and we'll answer in the same order that you answer your introduction, right? So Karina, then Beto, then Ali, is how has the current administration changed the way that DACA recipients are targeted for deportation? Karina? Karina, you're on mute?
Sorry. Yes. So this administration was handed a deportation machine, a sophisticated deportation machine, and they're using it to their fullest power. Unfortunately, during 2020 with COVID, it's inhumane what this administration is doing with our people, keeping them in confinement in these camps where they cannot have social distancing, where they don't have even the few hygiene items for them to stay safe. To me, this is a way of a genocide. It's a way of killing and putting our people at risk of their life. So this administration, we see over and over again the attacks that they have on immigrants, and it's very, very obvious with this pandemic. It has brought to the light so many cases, so many people that have been getting sick in these detention centers.
Beto?
Well, I personally think that this administration has changed a lot because, for example, like when ICE was notified that I still qualify for my DACA renewal, they didn't release me immediately. They still had me waiting like 9 months in detention, fighting for my case. where when I could have been fighting my case outside with my family. So I feel like it has really affected us as minorities. So it's time to change it up a little bit.
Ali, same question?
Yeah, so I think it's clear that this administration will do whatever it takes to attack the DACA program and use the DACA program to create confusion and anxiety when that was not at all the primary purpose for it being initiated. And it goes in line with the rest of their approach to immigration, which is detain and remove everybody who doesn't have status, and do it quickly and do it in a manner where nobody gets a chance to fight for their right to stay here. And it's similar to, it's what we're seeing with USCIS is what we started seeing pretty much right away with the administration's use of the immigration courts, which is to micromanage the courts and take big brother control of these agencies that fall under the Department of Homeland Security and take control of these and put in their own policies, whether public or not, that result in people being removed, that result in people being ripped away from their families and the homes and the lives that they know here in the United States. And what we see with this agency, USCIS, is that it's using its discretion, which they do have a lot of. So discretion meaning they get these applications like DACA and they get to just review them in some building somewhere, make the decisions, and a lot of times that's it from a legal perspective, especially with DACA. Once you make the decision, that's it. And they're using that discretion as a weapon, and they're using it as a weapon against DACA recipients. Now, as I mentioned, the administration is so willing to attack DACA that they're willing to fight it all the way up to the Supreme Court, which is what we recently saw happen. And we recently did see the Supreme Court decide to reinstate the DACA program, which initially seems like good news and a win. And we don't want to take away that in that way it was, that we were fighting back and we were winning. But the Trump administration then again went back once that win happened and went right back through their administrative agency arm of USCIS to continue attack DACA and say that they will reject all initial applications. You can only file a renewal, and the renewal period was shortened from 2 years to 1 year. And this is, again, continuing to roll back the DACA program. They have had plenty of opportunities to expand it or at least keep it how it was. And they have decided to instead continue to create fear and ignore what's best for our communities.
Thank you. Beto, the next question is directly for you. Beto, you were detained in 2019, denied relief by USCIS in 2020, and deported amidst a lot of community support. It became clear fairly quickly that we were under a current administration where USCIS and ICE had the same interest to deport undocumented immigrants. Can you tell us a bit about what have you experienced throughout your campaign in terms of retaliation? Beto, you are mute.
Yes, well, I experienced some retaliation when I was redetained. An example was when in the last detention facility I was in before my deportation, there were some jails, like the jail officers, their staff, they were like asking me like, why did they put you in isolation? Like, you don't have no reason to be here. So like even the own detention center staff like thought it was weird that they put me in isolation when I was redetained. So I think that's one form of retaliation from ICE. Another one was when I was redetained again. When I was in their ICE offices, they sorry, they they were making fun of my shirt, like, you know, like, because they were all together. They were like 7 guys, ICE officers by themselves. I don't know. I thought they thought they was cool. They were cool, so they were making fun of my shirt. And I also seen them like gathering up all together in their phones, reading OCAD posts when they were making fun of a type error that OCAD had made, where it said COVID-29 instead of COVID-19. So I feel like that's simple things that it shouldn't really matter. And behind the doors, they're really like a different person than what they show in TV or like in the media.
Thank you, Beto. I think you are highlighting, you know, some of the key pieces of what we're seeing, sort of like the facade of what ICE tries to portray it on, like protecting immigrants, and, you know, even thinking of how they demand larger budgets to make sure that the facilities are able to accommodate immigrants. But we know that all of the money that is coming in, it's obviously to be used against immigrants. So I think what you're sharing is powerful. I want to ask the question, what kind of support did you receive and what got you through those moments where you're experiencing detention and living through that?
I consider myself lucky because when I was in detention, I had a lot of family and friend support, especially with my brother Miguel. Whenever I called him, he was always there, no matter what he was doing. So that really helped me emotionally, and economically, they would always help me too. So I received a lot of support, and I try to give my support to all my inmates that were with me. So because like when you're in detention, you're by yourself. So if we don't help each other, nobody's gonna help us. But yeah, basically, and like receiving letters from family and friends, like really kept you strong, you know, to keep on fighting. So I'm really thankful for all the support I was given in my detention time.
Thanks, Beto, for sharing that. I think overall, right, many of our viewers might know this already, but you were deported back in June of 2020 of this year, back to Mexico after so many years of living in the United States. Besides now knowing that you've been deported and you're currently in Mexico, can you tell us a bit about your case and where it's standing right now?
Yes, like you said, I was deported in June. It's already almost 5 months. I mean, uh, but like even though I'm deported, like I'm all the way here in Mexico, the fight's still not over. We're still finding different type of strategies or tools that will help me to get back with my family. We actually have a survey. We're trying to find like similar cases with like charges that are similar to my case, which are traffic violations. And we're trying to see like if we find more evidence of retaliation from ICE within that. So we're still fighting for our justice overall. So what else? But yeah, the fight still goes on, and that's pretty much it.
This survey will be shared, or the link to the survey will be shared in the comment box throughout the webinar today. And so feel free to give us those responses and support Beto by sharing some of your experiences if you're a DACA recipient that might have received an approval from USCIS regardless of citations, violations of traffic like tickets, or any other misdemeanor charges.
Thank you, Beto, and thank you, Antonio, for sharing with us. I want to wrap this question to Ali. I think you did an amazing job giving us a breakdown of like what has changed. You know, it was a little bit of that intro, but I want to dig in on what are the different actions that had to be taken actually to obtain Beto's release from detention and actually halt his deportation. And how is that different from like now from versus how you would have fought a similar case in pre-current administration?
Yeah, so I could probably do an hour talk about the full procedural history of Beto's case. And that is all due to the bureaucracy and confusion within the current administration's Department of Homeland Security, which is where ICE and USCIS and CBP all fall under. But I actually want to take Cynthia's last question first to kind of show you the big difference as to how we would have prior to this administration if Beto was eligible for DACA, which he was, to renew his DACA. If he had gotten detained, we would have asked ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, who is typically the branch that detains people within the interior of the United States, puts them in detention. We would have asked them for what's called a prosecutorial discretion release and asked them to release Beto so he could renew his DACA. In all likelihood, prior to this administration, that would have happened. And back in May 2019, he would have been released and we would have been able to file his DACA. Now we're over a year into Beto's case, and I'm going to tell you a little more detail without, going an hour long, but to let you know that we've probably talked to at least 10 different ICE officers. Beto's been detained in 5 different facilities. He has had cases filed within, I would say, 4 different types of courts, all because of something that could have easily been resolved according to ICE's own policies, even under the current administration. So when Beto was detained last year, the attorneys who were previously on his case before my team at Beyond was on his case, they asked ICE, based on something that was published on ICE's own website, to review a prima facie evidence of his DACA renewal eligibility and release him. I said, this is not our job. Look at go send this to USCIS. And so they sent it to USCIS. USCIS basically said, well, he has to get his fingerprints taken. I said, well, we can't release him to get his fingerprints taken. But so then USCIS said, there's nothing we can do. And we're not just going to share data between each other because obviously ICE already had his fingerprints. These attorneys continued to be basically bounced back and forth between ICE and USCIS, with both agencies saying this is not our responsibility. And meanwhile, Beto stayed detained, his family stayed without him, and OCAD and his community kept fighting. We did eventually file a lawsuit in the Northern District of Illinois because of the crazy back and forth and the mishandling of Beto's DACA application. We challenged it under the Administrative Procedure Act. And through some negotiations with the government attorneys, we were able to actually get a new bond hearing for Beto. So at that point, he was in Minnesota, we were in Chicago. We had to do it over the phone, but we were able to get Beto out on bond with a lot of community support, people going to the court in Minnesota, people calling in and saying that they needed to release him. And so that was it was a win, and we were really excited about it. And it was what needed to happen long ago, but unfortunately took quite a few months. And once he was released, we were able to file some appeals in his immigration case. And then we also ended up amending or changing his federal litigation case to what's called a mandamus action, which we did because even though he was now released and we even resubmitted his DACA application, we still weren't getting a response from USCIS. So Beto is essentially waiting out, living his life, helping out his family during the pandemic, and we're still not receiving a decision. And it took so long, and we've heard of other people whose only took 2 or 3 months, and we're still waiting and waiting and waiting. We finally get a message from ICE back in Iowa, where Beto was originally detained, saying he needed to go to a check-in in the middle of a pandemic in Iowa. We called ICE many times, gave them plenty of other options to do the check-in over the phone, to move it to Chicago. They insisted he drive there. They wouldn't give us any reason why he actually had to show up in person. But in the end, it turned out it was to detain him. And they detained him and deported him basically within 24 hours. And in that, once we found out, because they didn't let us know, we did try to file an emergency injunction to protect him from being deported. Unfortunately, it was too late. And now we're here. Now Beto is in Mexico. And while we are continuing the fight, it has been over a year. And the amount of, if you look at it, obviously from our perspective, the inhumanity of it overshadows everything, and how awful and violent they treated Beto and unjustly. But if even from a financial perspective, the amount of money that was poured into defending against Beto receiving his DACA and getting a decision in a timely manner, we see through all these multiple cases filed throughout this year. And it really means a lot to me that OCAD continues to fight, even though we don't currently have legal footing. We're really trying to still find that, and we're hopeful. And this type of panel makes me hopeful, knowing you are all listening and willing to fight. But this is the era we're living in. They're really willing to do anything to attack people in Beto's situation.
Thank you, Ellie. I want to urge the audience, right, to put in your questions that you might have for the panelists on the comment box. At the end of the panel, we will be voicing some of those questions, so feel free to insert them in the comment box. Thank you. Karina, now I'm gonna have a direct question for you. I know that you're coming to us right from Arizona, and you're doing a lot of work there. And you're going to be talking about a similar case to Beto, one of Carlos Martinez, right? Who is a member with your organization. Can you tell us a little bit about his case and where it stands now?
Yes, so Carlos Martinez is a member of the Arizona Dreamer Coalition, the organization I'm a part of. And with Carlos, it has been, oh my gosh, it's been such a novela. The ICE has been trying to do everything in their power to deport him, to send him back. Carlos has a mental health illness. And through that, he made a decision of going to Mexico and visiting his family out of desperation, because he couldn't get a job because he's a DACA recipient. And those are things that we face as DACA recipients. Employers don't see us as a long-term person in their company, employee in their company. And so they made tough decisions, right? He was very qualified for the position, yet he didn't get it. When he was in Mexico, he realized that he didn't make the best decision, tried to come back. And when he came back, they detained him and they sent him to Eloy here in Arizona, which is one of the detention centers here. He stayed there for over 11 months, almost a year. And his attorney had asked for prosecutorial discretion, just like Ali has mentioned, humanitarian parole, because he got COVID while he was in detention. They didn't listen. They would not listen. And finally, he got a court, and the judge, after many, many hours in the hearing, 8 hours or more, the fiscal here was like, the chief counsel was fighting, saying that he was a threat. And you know, when we know that mental illness, somebody with a condition, you know, that's not necessarily a threat. These people need help, and they didn't get the assistance. He did not get the assistance he needed while he was in these detention centers. So to us, his treatment in the detention center didn't help him with his condition. What it did, it make it worse. it made it worse for him. So finally, he fought his case. He was able to win in court, and they left him in the detention center for another close to 6 months. So, you know, it's ridiculous that he had already won his case. The judge had already given him his permanent residency, and yet they kept him, and they appealed the decision. So his case went all the way to the BIA, and they denied the appeal from the chief counsel. And so he was released finally. You know, not a lot of cases end that way. But with Carlos, because of the condition for mental illness he has, he was not ready to come out of detention after a year under a COVID pandemic. He had a crisis, and he ended up being detained again. We again, over and over again, see that collaboration between law enforcement locally and detention centers. Besides Carlos, we have another member whose name is the brother of one of our members, and he ended up being deported. He ended up being deported to Mexico. So that's the difference. Right now, Carlos is waiting to hear his court, and he has not received his permanent resident card yet. When I'm telling you that the case was the judge granted him his legal residence in February of this year, and he's still waiting for his permanent resident card. So like I said, this other member, I just heard this week from another one of our members asking for help because a friend of hers was stopped because he was speaking dialect. He was just stopped, and they put charges of human trafficking when he had never done anything like that. And next thing you know, because he didn't know his rights, he was deported to Mexico. So I think I'm gonna put him in contact with Beto and his campaign to see if, you know, we can bring him back, because the way that they detain him, just because he's usually at a place where he gets a ride to work, and he started speaking dialect on the phone, and somebody called the police, and from the police that picked him up, he ended up in ICE, and from ICE he was deported expeditiously. So again, these things are happening, and people need to find a way of fighting back, and so that's what we're trying to do in the organization, to help them and assist them with that.
Thank you, Karina, for that. We are seeing currently a rise of COVID-19 cases throughout the nation, right? And we know that a prison, jail, detention centers are no place to be during a pandemic. Can you tell us about Carlos' experience at Eloy Detention Center during the pandemic? And as a follow-up question to that, what would have been a better response to the pandemic as it concerns the well-being of immigrants, in your opinion?
Yeah, let me take a deep breath, right? It's been hard to see a friend. I didn't know Carlos before he was in this situation, and now I got to know him through this situation he went through. So I am like, the things I heard, you know, that happened to him in the detention center, like putting him in isolation, having him quarantined. Like, I believe that he should have been released, and so that he would have been with his family and not get sick with COVID. If he would have been released in February when he won his case, he would have not got COVID. We knew that ICE could not guarantee his well-being because he got sick. And even with that humanitarian parole, they didn't care. They said, oh, it was not in their power. He had to quarantine now that he was in detention, when they were not responsible enough to keep him safe. Then when he got released, his parents got COVID, you know. So it's, to us, we've been over and over again telling people, hey, like, the people who are in detention centers are at more risk of getting sick with this pandemic than anybody else out here. They cannot do social distancing. They don't even give them soap to keep hygiene and wash their hands, and, you know, they cannot keep social distancing. So it's imperative that we demand that ICE release these people to their families, to their homes, where they can be safe while they fight their cases. There is no reason to keep them there other than making a profit. We know that ICE is making a profit out of our people of color, our immigrants, because every bed that they fill is money that they're bringing in, and that's why they're not releasing them. And this is not right. It has to change.
Thank you, Karina, and again, grounding us in the power of our people actually exposing these conditions, and also honoring that Carlos couldn't be here, but that we are still grounded in his resilience and the power of him allowing us to talk about his case and his story, and knowing that when he's able and ready, I know that he's going to be able to continue to fight, not just for himself and his family, but for other people that have experienced the cruelty and the inhumanity of what we're seeing through this system. I want to follow up with a question, Karina, on how do you see the community support and the organizing playing a critical role on being able to get folks like Beto and the other folks that you already shared, right, that have been detained and deported. And I think this plays into one of our questions of the audience, talking about like, how can they help people like Beto and people like Carlos fight their case? So I think they're both a little bit intertwined. I feel like you can speak to that in the same context.
Yes, of course. I didn't know how to organize. I didn't know how to support anybody. When I was in high school, I didn't even realize that there were other immigrant students like me, and now through the organization, we get to meet people, and every time there's something happening, like there's a connection, and they call us and they say, hey, like, I'm in this situation, my friend is in this situation, what can I do? And so we, through help with the national partners like UWD, we've been able to assist people, to fight their cases, to organize their family, their members, to make phone calls in a campaign to stop a deportation, to bring people back. And I know that during this administration, it's different, because what worked on the prior administration, I'm telling you, we stopped a bus in 2013. I'm sorry, it was 2015. We stopped the bus outside of ICE, and that bus returned, and we were able to see someone that was in that bus released the next day. So we knew that those tactics would work. Unfortunately, with this administration, we see that nothing works. We had someone tie themselves to a tire of a car here in the ICE central office when Guadalupe de Rayos, one of the moms, the immigrant moms, was gonna be deported. They didn't care. They just waited to detain the person. They arrested the person, they moved the van, and then they took her out through another exit. So I was like in shock. I was like, oh wow, like this happened. Like we had hundreds of people outside of the ICE facilities, and under the prior administration, that would have worked, and under this one, it didn't work. That's when I got like really scared. That's when I was like, oh my gosh, like this is a whole different game. But through the resilience of my community, I've been able to overcome that fear that is still there. And we know that we still have loved ones that have been deported. And right now, as we're speaking, there's people that unjustly have been separated from their families and deported. But what we can do is connect with organizations like ours. Know that you're not alone. Know that there's always support in whatever level we can help you, whether it is maybe there's a campaign to pay for someone's bond, and you can help maybe by giving them a donation, a small donation. That's gonna go a long ways. Even if you're like, I can't do anything else, making a phone call during a campaign, signing a petition for somebody to be released. That is super important because if I call alone or Cynthia calls, they're not going to listen to us. But if we flood their phones like we have done before, if we flood their emails like we have done before, we know that we can get results when something is unfair and when they're separating our family members. So with Carlos, we also did a campaign. So that was like really helpful as well to put public pressure. That's always going to be helpful. So please know that you're not alone. Don't feel alone. There is your community with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I wanna, I wanna acknowledge one of the questions that came in, and I think it ties directly to the follow-up question that I wanna have. And I wanna also be mindful that we have elections coming up, and everybody's vote, everybody's voice, even if you can't vote, matters. So being able to mobilize folks on our issues and talk about why is it that we need a new organizing field, it's important. So because we are a C3 organization, we want to make sure that we're answering the questions without actually sharing any particular information about candidates. But I do want to tackle the question around, like, given what we have learned and knowing what 2021 could bring and the potential new energy, what priority should be, right? Like, knowing that this is new energy, and we know that there should be a priority to demand protection for everyone. What can you share for people who are maybe feeling like we're just gonna get a lot of the same, or we're gonna get, the 2.0s, or a lot of the lost energy in the past? How do you ground yourself knowing that we have an opportunity to actually change the ecosystem in which we're organizing? And we can kick it off with Beto, since we want to do sort of like a turnaround. That way we give Karina a second to breathe.
Well, I think that this new energy of 2021 could be a positive one if we all gather up together and organize our communities. And like Karina said, connect with other people, because like when I was in there, like I thought me and my family, we're really not gonna do anything going against the government. Like, well, I mean, like an agency like ICE. So I personally thought it was impossible that we were gonna be by ourselves. But now that I see that how powerful the community is, I really, ask community, like, just to organize, like connect with your neighbors and stuff like that. Like that really makes a big difference. There's a lot of injustices all around the world. So if we all connect and we all try to fight together, I know we could make this world a better place to live in. So me personally, I want to like encourage people, like Karina said, just sign a petition, small donation, anything will be helpful to make a call. Like that really helps a lot. So let's make a change in this new year. It's time for a change, to be honest.
So I'm just gonna start out by saying that I completely find so much energy from the resistance that I'm seeing. And I don't just mean that in the legal field, I mean that in the activist organizations I've worked with and I've seen working so powerfully and with such self-determination throughout the country. So I truly mean that. And I think you should find a lot of energy in that too, because especially what we're seeing as immigration attorneys is that what this administration has tried to do is go against what the priorities are for our communities, like giving people legal status and giving them a chance to succeed. And so what they get is they get people and organizations and attorneys who fight back, and they fight back a lot of times through litigation, and then the government has to defend themselves. And we are winning a lot of those cases. And then what happens is the government continues to try to wear us down with new policies that we have to challenge. And I just want to say, as far as what I'm seeing on the immigration legal advocate side, is that they're going to keep trying to wear us down, but we will continue to wear them down. So as long as this activism is continuing its energy, I don't see any reason why we are all going to be stopping from using all of our tools, legal or otherwise, to continue this fight. And I agree with particular, one of the comments that was brought up, I think on today, someone's question to our panel today, is that there is some concern that I share, and I think a lot of people share, that first off, if we do get a new administration, there's going to have to be a lot of damage control. There's no doubt about that. It's going to take some patience and time to fight back against all these policies, whether public or not public, because there are some that we just don't even know about sometimes, that we're going to have to fix. And I'm confident we can do that. But I definitely want to, I think we're all going to be challenged to make sure that we're not just reverting back to a system that was already compromised and that we know was also criminalizing, militarizing, and harming our immigrant communities. And I don't have the perfect solution for that. And I don't think, unfortunately, many of us do. But I will say that there have been very viable immigration reform options on the table, and Congress has not acted on those. And I know you hear this over and over, but if you do push your Congress people, I do feel like we can make some movements in that area and we can see actual change and not just very, very imperfect and limited solutions like we see with the DACA program right now. And I want to wrap up my answer by saying in my response to this question and how we can look for new energy, I'm reminded of something one of my law school professors said, who kind of wrote the book on crimmigration, Cesar Cuauhtemoc Garcia Hernandez. He would always tell me, and he's a very blunt and honest man, but he would always say, you know, over the past couple of years and even prior to that, it really has kind of felt like a nightmare in the immigration world, and like things just keep getting worse. And we never could have imagined it, but now we're seeing it, so we don't even have to imagine it. And that's pretty defeating. But if we can now see and imagine this nightmare, why can't we imagine how the dream of, like, how can't we just pick the dream as well and say, well, we're going to get to there. If we can get to the nightmare, why can't we get to the dream scenario, which is everybody feeling safe and like they have the option to determine their own futures and be at home. And so I really challenge us all to feel like we can get there. And I'm so energized by you all. And I hope to be an ally as this fight continues.
Yes, thank you so much, Ali. Really kind words, and Beto for sharing his story. This reminds me of a few months ago, I was helping one of our members with their DACA renewal, and he was with a couple, and the man told me that he asked me if I didn't recognize him with the mask. You don't recognize anybody, but his name is Ardani. And I remember when I joined ADAC, or Arizona Dream Coalition, Ardani had a campaign. We had a campaign for Ardani, and he got deported. He got deported, and we were able to bring him back. And that gives me hope. I think for 2021, we can go back to those moments of joy where we bring people that have been deported back to reunite with their families. And I saw Ardani with his wife, and he had their son, you know, and so I have 2 children, and I know for me to be separated from my children would be the worst nightmare that I could imagine. And I know that because organizations like ours and the resilience of our people, we're going to continue fighting back. So I can tell you that no matter what administration we have in 2021, no matter what administration we have, we're going to have one another. We're going to have each other to keep on fighting, to keep on pushing. We're going to have each other to make sure that these elected officials are held accountable to our people, that they stop this system of oppression and this system of profit making from our bodies. That's going to continue regardless and no matter what. So to me, 2021 brings joy, I need more energy. You know, I'm getting the goosebumps just thinking about it, you know, more marches, more chanting, more calling, more putting pressure on whomever it is, so that we demand that our life and our dignity and our humanity is not stepped over, that we are recognized and that we're all together in this. So I look forward to seeing meeting Beto in 2021. I look forward to being able to go back. I went back to Mexico to see my siblings after 18 years. I hadn't seen them. And then again, I can't go back, but I look forward to 2021 going back, and I don't know, maybe during my sister or my brother's birthday, I will be like hugging them and kissing them again, not just seeing them through a cold phone screen. So that's what I look forward to, and that fight is worth fighting. And I am so honored and so happy to be able to fight it along all of your side. Thank you.
Wow, so inspiring. Now we're gonna open it up for your questions that you might have to the audience, right? And we do have a couple of them. We're gonna start with a simple one, and that any of you can answer as well, right? The question is, how can we help Beto and Carlos fight their cases?
I can start. I can, just as I mentioned before, people can plug into campaigns, even across other states, right? Like you don't have to live in the same state to make a phone call or to sign a petition. Also, what you can do, I know that they might have like legal fees or money that they have to pay for fines or bonds. That's another way. If you see that they have a GoFundMe, pitch in $5-10, and that's gonna help them go a long ways. I know that Carlos, last time when he got detained, he needed $10,000 to be released, and his family didn't have the means. His parents got sick, and they didn't have a lot of work. So again, that's like another way that people can totally help. But during this time, if you are a citizen 18 and eligible to vote, you definitely can cast that vote. You definitely can participate, so that your voice is heard, and you can give us that don't have a voice that way. Thank you.
I can answer quickly for Beto. Something pretty concrete you can do right now, which Beto already mentioned, is if you are a DACA recipient and can fill out the survey that's posted by this Facebook Live. In the journey I described of Beto's case, what I did forget to mention is we did finally get a decision on his DACA case, and they ended up denying it. And we made an argument that it should not be denied because there were things on Beto's record that were actually what we defined as traffic offenses, and that we think, based on what we've heard in Illinois at least, are ways that traffic offenses can be used as criminal convictions to eventually do things like weaponize discretion and deny DACA to people. And we're really interested to see if there might be a way to challenge the way this is used against people in cases like Beto and maybe even others. So that's kind of why it's really important. You fill out the survey if you feel comfortable. We would really appreciate it. And then kind of mentioning what Karina said about if you do see other campaigns like Beto's, and if you can follow Beto's as it continues through OCAD's website, I'm sure through UWD's website, certain campaigns, it really does matter. Sometimes it probably might not feel like a phone call or a letter or writing a letter for somebody's bond hearing matters. But I'm here to tell you, in my limited experience so far as being an immigration attorney, I've seen judges comment on getting certain calls or getting so many letters they have to review, and commenting that they notice how many people have been packing courtrooms. Obviously that's a little limited right now with COVID, but I'm telling you it's noticed and it matters, and it almost always means that things will have a better outcome for people we're fighting for.
Beto, anything that you would like to add?
Yeah, I would like to just a quick comment that it's time to like challenge criminalization, because I don't believe that an agency has the power to determine your future, you know, like, so even like we're all humans, we all make mistakes. So why should a mistake like depend on your future, you know, like determine your future? So I think, I don't know, I think we could change like how the laws are made, so it could be benefiting everyone, not just the people in charge of the country, you know.
Thank you for sharing that. And Ali, you mentioned the survey. There was a question regarding whether somebody needs an organizational email in order to do the survey. That has been changed or modified at this point. You do not even need to provide an email. You can actually provide a phone number if you don't have an email, or vice versa. So yeah, make sure that if you are a DACA recipient and you fit into this criteria, you fill out the survey so that you can help the legal team of Beto, right? And potentially others like Carlos to also be able to like bring them back. Are there any other questions that we know of? I'm asking the tech team. Okay. So it looks like we might not have any more questions for now. The third question got answered through the panel discussion. Any closing? So with that, I'm gonna close today's panel. I would like to ask each panelist a final question on what keeps each of you motivated during these uncertain times. And for those that are joining us, feel free to also like comment your question or your answer to this question in the comment box below. And we're gonna start with the same order. Perhaps we can start with Karina, then Beto, and then Ali.
Yeah, what keeps me motivated in these times? This week I'm not gonna have a day off actually. It's a final stretch. We're giving it our all. You know, I will rest next week because of I gotta take care of myself, right? But I think what gives me joy is my children and my 18-year-old that this year it's gonna be the first time that he votes. In 2010, after SB 1070, we marched in the mega marches, and he was 8 years old, and he was marching with me, and we were chanting, today we march, tomorrow we vote. And a decade later, right, that has become a reality, and that gives me so much hope and so much joy that we are in the right direction. The moms that are canvassing and knocking on doors to make sure that people are able to participate in the process, being undocumented themselves, give me so much joy and so much hope because they are empowered. So I know that we will win. I believe that we will win. It's just a matter of time. Thank you.
What keeps me motivated in these hard times is that there's still good-hearted people out there. So, you know, like, I feel like this world is not over, you know, like the fight's still going on. And what also keeps me really motivated, that it's that every empire has an end. So we're not gonna be living like this forever. So things will get better after the rain. So So that's what keeps me motivated.
I really think what keeps me motivated is the communities that I work with. I'm really fortunate to do a job that I look forward to doing every morning. And it took me a long time to get here, but I feel incredibly fortunate to work with such inspiring and intelligent people. And I will also say that just knowledge and intelligence generally has been inspiring me, because I think there's so many wonderful resources being produced, especially by a lot of our community organizations and partners that make knowledge a lot more accessible. And I think we can fight really successfully that way. I try to use, for example, just the fact that we haven't always been this way. So there's no reason to think we can't go back. It wasn't until the 1980s that this massive detention prison system came into place. We didn't always have such militarized southern borders. We were good. I mean, not everything was perfect, but the fear and the threats that a lot of the people from both sides express about immigrants are just so blatantly untrue. And we have our own past and history and facts to fight against that fear. So I definitely am hopeful because of these, the knowledge, and I mean all kinds of knowledge of all different people from all walks of life who are joining us in this resistance.
Thank you all. And there was another question in the comment box that was just given to us. Somebody asked whether there's any criteria for the survey besides having DACA. So overall, we will say, right, that we want to monitor USCIS activities and acceptance. We would like to hear about how they alter the way they address DACA renewals for individuals, depending on which state, or whether they are organizing with an organization like United Way Dream or OCAD. So we would love to hear from any individual DACA recipient, right, that has filed to renew that DACA during the current administration. Thank you so much for that question. I'm gonna leave kind of with a summary of the 2021 priorities that some of you mentioned, right? We mentioned to continue to organize and build networks of support. We mentioned resist with a variety of different tactics and tools. We must do damage control of the damage that was created by the current administration. We must dream and imagine a different alternative to our current immigration system and deportation process, and bring those that have been deported back, like Beto and Carlos, to bring them back into our communities. More direct actions, and of course, continue to challenge criminalization and continue to demand the release of all individuals in detention centers through the Free Them All campaign. And finally, abolish ICE. With that, I thank all of you, our panelists. Thank you, Cynthia, for co-moderating with me. We invite folks to share this webinar with your networks. Continue to fill out the survey that Beto and Ali discussed earlier, which is also in the comment box, and continue to organize in your town, in your city, to abolish ICE. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.